Hello, I'm NHS Secretary Dan Madrid, and I'm here with Commander Bill Lynn. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Dan. How are you?
Good,
Glad to hear.
thank you. Why did you decide to pursue a career in the military?
Well, that's a good question, and I'm not really sure I have a good answer for you. I just know that ever since I was a little boy, all I ever wanted to do was fly jets for the military, and specifically the Navy. And I was very fortunate that it worked out that way.
Well, I'm glad it did. What job from your vast military career was your favorite, and why?
I would think the one I got the most satisfaction out of was when I was an instructor. The reason being, Um, the way naval aviation works is they send you to flight school. That takes about 2.5 years. You then spend a year learning to fly the particular airplane that you'll fly when you go out into the fleet. You spend 3 to 4 years doing that, and then you go back. They immediately take you back in as an instructor. So it's really cool in that you're still pretty young, you're still pretty new, but you now have a chance to impact the folks that are coming behind you. And it literally, your life may depend on the job that you do, because the guys that you train, they're going to go to their squadrons, and chances are, well, not chances are, you will see them again when you go back out into the fleet and start deploying again. So the guys that are going to be your wingmen, the guys you're going to fly with, the people in your squadrons and the other squadrons around you, they're the fruits of your labor. So it was enormously satisfying to see people learn and advance, but it was also enormously satisfying to go back out into the fleet and fly with those guys and see them mature and move on.
Um, how have you applied your education, whether it be from Plum High School, the Citadel Naval War College, or the Joint Forces College throughout your career in life?
Um, I touched on it last night a little bit. The experiences that I had here at Plum High, and every impression I've gotten is it hasn't changed a whole lot. The education that I got, the discipline that I had, and the way that I studied and the way I went about things really has served me well to this day. Um, you have a good thing going here. You have a great community here, and you have a great school, and you don't realize, at least I didn't when I was your age, the quality of things that you go through and the impact that things have on you until you get away from it a little bit and you get a little bit of perspective. So when I look back now, I was very blessed. I had good teachers here. I had people who cared about me here. I had people who prepared me for the stuff that I did later on. Now, as for the rest of those places that I went to school, it just, one thing builds on another, and you will see that as you get older, that you go to high school and you have your experiences here. You go to college, you take those experiences from high school and the things that you had, both good and bad. That's something always to remember. I had a guy tell me once that as you go through life, and he was doing it in reference to leadership in the Navy, he said, in your head you have two binders. You have binders that have all the good things that you saw, and you have a binder that's all the bad things that you saw. And he said, chances are the bad binder may be bigger than the good binder. But you build on those experiences, you move on, and you're pulling things with you along, but then you're adding to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a mash the obvious thing, but it's really true, and you don't fully appreciate that until you get down the road a little bit.
Thank you for showing your wisdom. Thank you. What is your favorite aircraft to fly, and why?
Well, I spent when I got out of flight school in '93. I then spent the successive 14 years in F-14s. And that was in the lexicon of airplanes. It's pretty iconic. It's the one you saw in the movie Top Gun, and that's really cheesy to say it, but most people, that's when you say that to them, they can relate to that. They understand that because everybody's seen that movie, even guys your age. I mean, the movie's 30 years old, for God's sake. That airplane was a lot like, this is how I characterize it, was a lot like a muscle car, like a 60s muscle car. It was big, it was loud, it was faster than anything. It was very archaic technology. It was designed and built in the late 60s and early 70s. And while they certainly improved it as the years went on, the core of it was still this sort of old school kind of way of doing things. And it was just neat. It was just a neat airplane. It looked impressive. It was imposing. It could do some amazing things, especially when it started out in the 70s and even to the last day. I flew the last F-14 on the last day the U.S. Navy had them. And even to that day, it did things that no other airplane in the world to this day can do. So it was a lot of fun. I then moved on to the F-18 Super Hornet. And while the Tomcat was a muscle car, the Super Hornet was more like a new Ferrari. It was still really cool, but it was a different kind of cool. It was much more refined. It was much more modern technology. So it was a little different of a thing. But yeah, the Tomcat's first love, man. So good stuff.
So you would prefer the Tomcat over the Super Hornet?
I would, but you're very quickly getting into a place where you have an emotional attachment to something, but as time moves on, you know, it's gonna slowly be superseded by technology and things like that. The F-14, if it was still flying today, and this is now 9 years after we got rid of them, it would still do a pretty doggone good job, but at some point, it's gonna fade fully into historical irrelevance, I guess, this time. Well, it's already irrelevant. We don't have them anymore. So, anyway.
What is your proudest achievement and why?
I think my proudest achievement, it would kind of be a culmination of things. I was really, really lucky, and anybody in the military to some degree or another will tell you the same thing, that you can talk about airplanes and the cool stuff that you got to do and flying, or if you're a soldier, the cool things you got to do with tanks and rifles and blowing stuff up and whatnot. But the real magic in military service are the people that you come in contact with. The guys that I flew with, the relationship that I have with them, and they're still my best friends. They're still the people that I spend time with and do things with, so on and so forth. Those relationships are amazing, but it's not only the guys that you fly with, it's the people that make all of that happen. So I'll give you a quick analogy, or I'll give you a quick little story. So we fly these airplanes, and you have teams of technicians that take care of the airplanes. The last guy to look at the airplane, the guy that's responsible for its appearance and that all of that maintenance was done and all the panels are closed and the plane is ready to go, is one of the most junior sailors in your squadron. Guy that's 19, 20 years old, fresh out of high school, you know, pretty young guy. And to see the pride and the performance and the hard work that those young folks put into it, and to know that you're a part of that, that was the most fulfilling thing. It was humbling every time you walked out to an airplane and there's a kid there, and as you get older, he may be 17, 18 years younger than you. And that kid, that's his airplane, and he's handing it to you, and he's telling you that it's safe and it's ready to go. And it's cool to see that responsibility, to see that pride, and to know that he's busting his hide for you. And he's a young guy, man, not much older than you are, doing that sort of thing. It's impressive. So,
I'm sure it must be. You stated that you were in places such as Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Where exactly were you stationed?
Well, remember, I was a carrier-based aviator, so the majority of my time where I was based was on an aircraft carrier that sat in the waters off of those places. I flew over all of them. It was a different experience than the guys that were on the ground chewing the dust. It was a radically different experience. Certainly, we had threats. We had, especially in the early parts of the Iraq War and when we kicked off Afghanistan, there were a lot of people shooting at us. But it was, again, a different experience than the fellas that were on the ground. I will tell you unequivocally, they had it a lot harder. My war was a different one than theirs, and I'm very, very fortunate, and my hat's off to those guys, and my heart goes out to all of those guys that were eye to eye and face to face and are to this day. People forget that. You got a lot of Americans out there who still wake up every morning getting shot at. So, and that's going to go on for many years to come. So, where I was based was, I got to go back to my nice aircraft carrier every time I flew over those places. And there were a lot of people who, went to bed in a bunker or a tent or something. So, anyway.
Do you ever miss being on active duty, or are you satisfied with your current work?
I was very lucky in my career. When somebody flies from the military, the vast majority of guys get to do the cool stuff, quote unquote, the flying, the going overseas, for maybe 6 to 10 years. And a lot of that is personal choice. People then get out of the military, go pursue other things, or the military finds other things for them to do. I was lucky. I did that for 17 years straight. Actually closer to 18, that I was an operational aviator. My last 2 years, I would have kept doing it, but I had some medical problems that kept me out of the cockpit. So I got to do the neat stuff longer than anybody. And the reason I bring that up, to answer your question, was, of course I miss it. I would give anything to be back there doing it. But I got more of it than most, way more of it than most. 90% of my peers didn't fly. The guys that I started with were nowhere to be seen when I had my last flight. Not because they did anything wrong or were messed up or anything. It's just, that's the way it works. It's sort of a younger man's game, and I got to do it for a long time. So it's a mixed emotion. Yes, I would go back, and yes, I loved it, but I certainly appreciate that I got more than my share, so I'm pretty happy with that too. So.
Do you have an experience in your collegiate career that is particularly special to you? What is it and why?
Collegiate career experience that's particularly special to me. I would say, I'm going to go back to this string that a lot of the folks that are here this week are talking about, is running this back to what happened to me here at Plum High. My freshman year, 2 separate incidents my first semester. English and history professors at school pulled me aside, and I'll back this up by saying I was a very average, I mean, I got good grades here, but I was not top of the line guy here, you know what I mean? I was a good student, I wasn't a great student, and a lot of that was on me, that I probably didn't apply myself well enough, but it is what it is. But I got pulled aside my freshman year by 2 separate professors, and they asked me, they said, where did you learn to write? How did you learn to study? Because you're doing very well. I was kind of singled out. And I sort of, I'm like, you sure you got the right guy? And I very quickly realized that, again, that experience that I had here and the preparation I got here at Plum High was serving me very well. So that was really neat. That was a hat tip to me, but it was more a hat tip to the people that got me there. And that was kind of cool. Again, I was very lucky. I had the nature of where I went to school meant that there were a lot of really signal experiences that you had throughout it. But having that confidence that I didn't even know I had until I started getting that perspective that I've discussed, that, wow, I'm really ready to go here, and I can do anything I want. And it took me a while to realize, that, at least academically. And I think that's what I would say to answer your question. That was pretty neat.
Well, once again, we'd like to thank you for your time. I understand you aren't back in Plum for very long, so it's very nice to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you. You guys did a great job. I appreciate the hospitality and all the nice things that everybody is doing and said. And Dan, I wish you the best of luck at Cornell and all your compadres, and just enjoy it. And, man, the world is your oyster, man. Take it and eat it up.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time.